Okay, Mindy Pechenuk, good afternoon. Thank you for joining us here with the Brotherhood of Elders Network. Very, very grateful for you making time to join us for this conversation today.
Well, thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
So we have a few questions today. We want to talk about your candidacy here in the special election. This series is called the Real Talk About the Town series, where we interview folks looking to run for public office in Oakland. As you know, we have the mayoral election, District 2 election, and we've been spending time with as many candidates as we can. And so we'll start with a little background, then dig into the issues a little bit. So you can tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, what's your background professionally, and how'd you make it to Oakland?
Well, that's a journey of a story. I actually was trained as a classical musician.
Okay.
I'm a bassoonist by training. And, you know, as we were talking before, I grew up in New York City. And I sort of became, I did become political when I was, because I realized something my grandmother had told me when I was a kid, which was, you have to leave this world a better place than when you came into it. And that stuck with me. But I didn't like what I saw of a lot of politics. And when I was at graduate school, I ran into an individual who is a little controversial to some people, so I'm used to controversy, named Lyndon LaRouche, who had built a political movement at the time, which to me really hit at what I thought a political movement should be, about human development, human creativity, about the fact that God created us in his image with a beautiful mind to develop new scientific breakthroughs, you know, advance our society. Every generation has that chance. So that's how I got into politics, was through that. And that was about 50 years ago. I'm 73, proud to say. And, you know, so at this point, running for mayor of Oakland is not a career for me. It's something I think I want, that has to be done, because having lived in Oakland now for about 10 years, and having lived around the entire country from in the Midwest for 26 years in Chicago, and being slightly my age, too, you've seen the destruction that has gone on in this country and around the world to generation after generation, which has gotten worse and is destroying human life. And here in Oakland, I can't stand it anymore to walk around the streets and see, like even just coming over here from my house to here, there was a young girl. She couldn't have been more than, she looked like she was 17 years old. Barely anything on. Heels up really high, clearly prostituting. And that's right down International Boulevard. That cannot be allowed to go on. The drugs, fentanyl, the drugs in the streets of this city, this can't be allowed to go on. Oakland didn't used to be like this. Oakland was a great industrial manufacturing town in the 40s and the 50s. And so we have to bring that back. And that's why I decided to run for mayor, because I didn't see in anybody else, even though there's some good people running, but I don't see the commitment of a vision to say, okay, we're not going to go by business as usual. We're going to go after the drug cartels. We're going to work with the federal government of Donald Trump, because a city can't do it by itself, where you need to go to the offshore markets, where the drug cartels and the human trafficking is in bed with the other politicians and the bankers, and it's a business for them. And that's got to be shut down. And, you know, I've done many ride-alongs with the police in Oakland, particularly in East Oakland. And I can tell you the hands of our police are tied, which is one of the other things that really I've had to come to learn, is that the ordinances of this city of Oakland are preventing our police from doing their job. So that's why I jumped into running for mayor, because we can't have another generation go through this.
Okay, thank you for that, Mindy. So tell us, do you have any experience in politics or public service here in the Bay Area?
Well, here in the Bay Area, yeah, not exactly in holding office, but I've played with the Bayfield Youth Orchestra down in Fremont, to help them out with their performances because they needed a bassoon player. So I've gone to work with them. I am a member of the Alameda Republican Central Committee here in Alameda, and do a lot in that capacity and I've run for office before. I actually ran for Oakland City Council at large, and I ran for a state assembly against Mia Banta. And needless to say, I didn't win those races, but it got a lot of my ideas out. And so I'm jumping into this race, even though I know they're trying to make it look like there's only two people in the race, Barbara Lee and Lauren Taylor. That's why I appreciate you having the interviews, to get out the other voices that are actually running, that the population should have to know, because we can't just have it be a controlled environment. And so this is why I really would like to be mayor, because if we don't make a change, just because somebody hasn't held office yet doesn't mean they're not qualified to hold office. Just because somebody hasn't raised $75,000 doesn't mean they're not qualified to be in office either. So that's how I would answer your question.
Well, thank you for that. And we're talking about the city of Oakland. There's a lot of love here for this city. What do you love most about Oakland?
What I love about Oakland, one, of course, is the people. And, I've come to, actually, I never thought I'd say I'm in love with Oakland, but I am in love with Oakland, which is why I'm running for mayor. This city has such a rich history. I've been looking into the history of Oakland since I wasn't born and raised here. I wanted to know, what was Oakland? How did it get started? And that's what's so striking to me when you look at what it was as a city. It's like, since I grew up in New York, it's like a miniature city of New York, because you have industry, you could have manufacturing, you have the Port of Oakland, which could be a great resource for the city for exporting to other parts of the country, to other states, other countries. You have growing up in New York, you have an appreciation of a diverse population. When I was a little kid in New York, I used to sit there and think, well, how could anybody grow up in Montana? There's no people there. So I always grew up around every ethnic group you can imagine and every religion you can imagine. And so Oakland has that. But what I've seen, how it's been destroyed as a city, that to me, we got to bring it back, and we got to bring back the culture that it once had. So that's what I love about Oakland. And, this may be, at 73, you look at it and you say, I don't want to move anywhere else right now. I want to stay here and make it work.
Well, thank you for that. And I think that actually is a great segue into, jumping into some of the issues here. Public safety, of course, is a really big one in a lot of folks' mind. And there's been a narrative that crime is on the rise here in Oakland. But statistics show that violent crime and crime overall has actually been down in the city. How will you reconcile that information in your budget priorities and your strategy for governing as mayor?
Well, that's dear to my heart, and this is why I've done the ride-alongs with the police, because I had to find out what was really going on. Because you can't tell from the data, you can't just tell from the surface of the news articles. And there's several things we have to do which has not been done, which is, okay, given we have to increase the police officers. That's definitely true. I mean, we have very few police officers on the shifts, and I don't believe crime has gone down. Maybe the reporting has gone down or something. I mean, I'd have to look more into that, the data, but from what I've seen and what I've experienced, that even though we do need to increase, there's not enough officers at this point. But we must do several other things or it's not going to work. You could have 1,000 officers and it won't work. You have to change the ordinances of the city, which are tying the hands of our police, that they cannot just go after what they need to do on their job. We need to get rid of the Federal Oversight Commission, Robert Warshaw, I think his name is, who this city has been under federal oversight since I think 2010, if I have the year right. And there's no reason for it anymore. I know the police officers that I've worked with and met, they're doing what they have to do, and they actually care about the people. So we should get rid of these. People don't realize Oakland is different than other cities, in California even, where the oversight on our police is off the charts. They have to spend a lot of time writing reports for, obviously I'm going to, for just anything they do, basically. And it's hindering their ability to spend more time policing and doing what they need to do. So one thing is you have to change the ordinances, get rid of the oversight commissions, and increase it. I think it's insane that the city council cut the police academies. They've closed down the only 2 police academies. How are you going to have any new recruits into the police force? And they need backup. So that's why I think, there's a lot of programs you can talk about and different technical things, which there's a lot of those technical things I support. And I think the mayor has to have a rapport with the police. I would want to have not just the police chief, which is something to reconsider in our own charter, which I think has to be looked at. The whole Oakland charter needs to be reworked. And because is it right for the mayor to appoint the police chief? Or should the police chief be elected by the people? That's an interesting question. I think that's an important question. Also, the mayor should have a rapport directly with the officers that are involved, with the different divisions, with the patrols. They need to have firsthand knowledge of what it's like to be in a patrol car, going to a scene, seeing what happens, seeing what has to be done. The city is run very inefficiently. We have patrol paddy wagons in the city, new ones. Are they used? No. Why? Because it costs money. But meanwhile, you have to take 2 officers to go to San Rita, to the jail out. I think it's in Dublin, if I'm right. And that takes 2 officers off the beat to have to take somebody to the jail, where if you had a paddy wagon, they would come by and pick up the offending person. And the other thing, a lot of our problem with safety and crime is drugs. Most of the people who are committing crimes are either mentally ill or high on drugs. And the fact that that's not considered part of safety, shocks me. That we have fentanyl, all over Oakland. In San Francisco, they have a program called DMARC. It's a drug program which allows the police, the sheriffs to work with the federal government. And I think we need that in Oakland. And I'll tell you one thing that this DMARC group did. The drugs that are going into San Francisco, where do they come from? Oakland. There was just an arrest of 3 people in Oakland who work with the Sinaloa cartel, whose drugs were then being used from Oakland to transport into San Francisco. So the San Francisco DMARC group came into Oakland and arrested 3 individuals. So, and to say that, to allow our streets, our people, to be bent over on whether it's fentanyl, whatever drug, and fentanyl is killing a lot of innocent children as well. I don't know how versed a lot of people are, but I work very closely in this. A lot of kids today are dying of fentanyl, not because they're drug users even. They're got a lot of anxiety because of the pressure in school. Okay, they can't handle the anxiety, so they go to take a Percocet. They buy it off of, Instagram or one of these chats. And that pill that looks exactly like what they think they're taking is laced with fentanyl. And these kids take it, and they never wake up. And so as mayor, this to me is a priority. You can't, if you don't clean up the drugs, you're never going to clean up the crime either. So that's where I connected to, and I connected to probably one of the other questions coming up, which is on homelessness. But really, the homelessness is a drug problem. So that's some of the strict measures that I would lay down groundwork and have the kind of open door rapport that you would need with the people on the ground, like the police, to be able to solve these problems.
Thank you for that. I want to go back to the budget conversation a bit. That's been a big theme for a lot of the conversations. And then you mentioned earlier that Oakland has got a great, rich diversity to it. You know, it's sort of like New York City as well. We believe that Oakland is still amongst the most diverse cities in the country.
Yeah.
And so also as part of finding a balanced budget, working with City Council, how do you plan to continue to invest equitably in those communities here, communities of color, diverse communities in the city?
Well, the first thing I would do is I would bring in the Doge.
Okay.
We need to clean out the finances of the city. It didn't start yesterday. This goes back to the 1970s. That the financial speculation that not only Oakland, but a lot of cities got into, and we never got out of. Because when you take down the industry and the manufacturing and the skilled jobs out of a city, you know, you are destroying your real revenue base, which is more than just revenue. It's just not about money coming in. If you just want money, I mean, you can do all kinds of things. But it's about how do we create a healthy society? What unites all of us? You know, what are the principles that bring everybody together? That's why I don't care if somebody's a Republican, a Democrat, an NPP or whatever. You know, there are principles. And if we're going to save Oakland, we got to operate on those principles. And so the first thing is, I think the budget of Oakland is loaded, just like the federal government, with a lot of pockets that nobody sees. That's why you can't look at a graph on the internet and know what the budget of Oakland really is. You have to be able to get in there and find the fine tooth, get rid of some of the NGOs, you know, get rid of some of the projects that are destroying our city. I don't think, you know, as far as I know, Oakland has never had a full audit, at least in the recent period. And that's why you need to, first of all, get in there and clean it out. At the same time, you have to change the tax system. I don't support the sales tax, Measure A sales tax that's going to be on the same ballot. I'm completely against. Oaklanders do not need another tax, you know, and we should create a tax system that actually lowers the taxes to bring in the incentives of new industries. Let's bring Oakland into the 21st century and bring in the new industries, bring in increasing the port activity, as I said earlier. And I'm looking at the fact that, you know, we should probably look at how do we eliminate a lot of the tax, because just taxing people or, you know, looking at, you know, parking tickets is the way you're going to create revenue for your city. No, you need real production. You need real small business. You need real medium businesses. You need a vibrant, healthy, you know, situation where there's a social interaction of people doing good things. So I would approach it that way. And also, I think this whole thing of just floating bond after bond after bond, Gerald and I, my husband Gerald and I always not joke about it, but it's a true story, is in New York City in the 1900s, they floated a bond to build a Second Avenue subway. Every time the bond came up for renewal, they kept renewing the bond. Finally, I think it was about 3 years ago, they finally built one station. So just floating bonds to pay back debt or to cover the interest does not solve the problem. And I think we need to reorganize the economy out of this whole system that it's in. And that's why you have to have a new approach. I call it the American system approach. The approach of Alexander Hamilton, the approach of people like Abraham Lincoln, McKinley, FDR, JFK, that approach. What President Trump is trying to do right now, you know, federally, which has been taken out of proportion by the lot of the media, you know, mainstream media, right, and trying to twist it. But there is such a thing called the American System School of Economics that built this country. And I'm looking to bring that into Oakland So, and Oakland had that, I think, at the point, if you look at East Oakland when in the 1940s, 30s, 40s, 50s, it used to be known as the Detroit of the West. Look at East Oakland today. Would you think it's the Detroit of the West? They had auto plants, actual physical auto production plants in East Oakland. You had Del Monte food production. You had bakeries. A friend of mine used to work at a bakery producing bread and all those good things people like. It's gone and replaced by what you see today in East Oakland. So that's how I would approach the budget, but not just the budget, but how we're going to actually get Oakland into a really great city again. And if we could do it in Oakland, we could do it everywhere in the country.
Thank you very much for that. Switching gears a little bit, we're about halfway through here for our questions. We're going to talk about the different levels of government. And what we're seeing, I think, in the first few months of this presidential election, we're seeing that local government might be more important than ever as it relates to people's access to their representatives, access to information, access to services that are most tangible to them. Mm-hmm. And so, as mayor, how would you work towards ensuring that every Oakland citizen can engage City Hall and your office in a meaningful way?
Well, the first thing I believe firmly in is an open door policy. Just like Abraham Lincoln had in the White House, I would have it for Oakland. That people should be able to come into City Hall. They should be able to sit down with their representatives, whether it's a city council member or a mayor, the mayor itself. I believe the mayor's office should be putting out 3 to 4 statements every week, so that citizens know, what is the mayor's office doing? What is the city council doing? Where are the problems lie? How do we solve it? I actually think the mayor and the city council should have town meetings, old-fashioned town meetings where the citizens can come and tell you what's on their mind, talk to you about what they're thinking. So that you have a give, not just you stand up there and you talk, but an actual old-fashioned give and take where you find out what's on the mind, find out what the problems are, beside your own view of them, and see, maybe there's a great idea out there that you haven't thought of as mayor. I hope so. I hope there are a lot of people. And how do we bring that vibrancy back? And the same thing I would bring in with the industries and the police and the firemen, even the sanitation, right? You need that kind of collaboration and dialogue, and not just a linear bureaucracy that works through this kind of chain. Because to solve problems, you actually have to have that kind of dialogue. And would be my approach to the mayor. And also, I would request it of the city council, and any government agency in the city should be that kind of open door. And we are a republic, and citizens are as important as the not just to elect the person, they're important for their ideas.
Absolutely. And in that vein, I think it's definitely an interesting proposition to have more discourse and dialogue, two-way dialogue between the populace and elected officials. And I think there's also an interesting, we were speaking with one of the council members, and he talked about this time being an interesting opportunity for us to reimagine what the city government looked like. It doesn't have to look like we're doing right now, and there's a very terse sort of conversation that needs to happen with the city council around what cuts are going to occur for us to be able to get a balanced budget. And we are in a pretty strong county, in Alameda County, which enjoys, maybe that's the wrong verb, but has a relatively healthy reserve and has been doing a good job, I think, of stewarding its finances over the last couple of decades. In what ways do you see working with the county, with Alameda County, to provide services to city residents where cuts may take away programs or capacity of the city to do the same?
Well, I've actually had a lot of interface with the Board of Supervisors. Usually presenting a case that they're, let's put it this way, I'm a known entity to the Board of Supervisors. I'm almost on every meeting bringing things to their attention that need to be brought to their attention, and also letting them know when I don't agree with them on what they're doing. And I think, quite frankly, the city needs to the Board of Supervisors needs to be a lot more respectful to what the city needs. I think there could be a lot more gain. They have special projects that they fund. They give away a lot of money. The Board of Supervisors is dealing with a lot of money. In fact, my husband ran for Board of Supervisor to replace Keith Carson. Clearly, we didn't win that race, but we were in a good fight. And right now, you have they could change how they're allocating a lot of the funds. To me, I would back different programs in their backing that would actually help the city. Like one of the things that really needs a revamping, beside the safety and the drugs, is education. Look, our school system is going bankrupt. And to me, that's horrible, because the most important wealth in our lives is the minds of our children. If you're not developing the minds of our children and giving them the capability to explore real ideas in science and art and music, and look at the great discoverers of the past, and how did they, not just what they did, but how did they make their discovery? And so I think there could be, and you look at the schools, talk to a lot of teachers. And here in Oakland, it's a tragedy what's happened in our schools. Not just Oakland, even I had a friend, in Alameda, and she was telling me how there were classrooms with no teachers. I mean, this is the 2025. This isn't the Stone Age. And the fact that, we don't have a good school system, a system that actually supports this kind of, or supports after, when I went to school in New York, it was required. This is in junior high school. You had to take shop. I had to take shop. I had to take electrical shop, woodworking shop, printing shop. And that was good, because it taught you some things about skills. And I think we need those kind of programs and after school. And I think that should be something that the city and the county work to do. Maybe it's not the way the charter works now, but let's change the charter. Let's not just say we can't do something because that's the way it is now. Well, let's change. Laws can be changed. And if you're not, and I think that's how we have to, that's just using the school thing as an example. But I think that it has to be a much closer relationship. And I can tell you that on election integrity, don't get me started, because I'm on an election integrity team that I work with here at TACA. And there's a lot of stuff that needs to be changed there, and the Board of Supervisors could play a big role in intervening on the Register of Voters. But that's a whole other story. Don't get me started on that one.
Thank you for that. Well, maybe on our next conversation, we can dive into that one. We'll go up one more level in government. Actually, we'll bypass the state, and we'll talk about the federal government's relationship with the city. We've seen figures that the federal funding accounts for over $100 million in revenue sources for the city of Oakland. What partnership opportunities with the federal government would you work towards keeping during your term as mayor?
Well, first of all, I think working with President Trump, we could actually do some very good things for Oakland. And the areas would be specifically in a few areas. One would be, as I said earlier, to work with the federal government on the drug question. Because to me, that is, if you don't cure this drug problem, I grew up before, drugs became a big thing when I was 1950s. By 1960s, drugs were a big issue by the time I was in 7th grade, 8th grade. But, so I've seen it get even every year, it's off the chart. So the first thing is to work with President Trump, the federal government, to work on the drugs. That's number one. I would bring federal revenue in to do that. Federal revenue to help bring in the new industries and businesses that we could have in Oakland, and to charter some of these kinds of programs that would help us create the incentives to bring in the most modern technologies, to bring in maybe Alameda next door has a fusion energy company moving in there, now moved in. Why doesn't Oakland have something like that? There's no reason we don't, except it's not fought for. So I would work with the federal government to get the kind of resources and backup to provide for those kind of incentives to happen. And then I would also look at the question again of education. What can we do to provide the education? So I think there needs to be a partnership, because we're one country under God, and we're not playing one part of the country off against another part of the country. So I think it would be very good and very advantageous, as I said in the last thing, if we, I wouldn't mind having the Doge come in and borrow from the federal government, because we need a serious cleanup. I think there's so much being wasted that doesn't have to be wasted in the way it is. So in its essence, to me, it's not really just a financial problem. It's a question of leadership. It's a leadership problem. So that's some of the areas I would work with the federal government on right off the bat.
Thank you. I'm going to take us home with a couple of questions here.
Okay.
This is a special election, and you would be filling in for the remainder of a term. Do you have plans to run for a full term to serve as mayor if you were to win in April?
If I fulfill my promises and my commitments to the people of Oakland, to my fellow Oaklanders, and I actually do what I'm talking about here and start the ball rolling and get things done, then I would run again. If I don't, then they shouldn't reelect me. I shouldn't run, because I don't believe in career politicians. I believe that you owe to the people what you say you're going to do. And if you're a good leader, you can get a lot of things done very, very, very quickly, and just move through and do what you have to do. So I would, if I win the election, that's what I would base it on. And if I do a good job, I'd take it for 4 more years, but that would be it. After that, no. After that, I'm looking for some younger people to move in and take over.
Okay. Well, speaking of younger people, this last question is about legacy. And I know you said you've been in Oakland for 10 years, but clearly have a passion and a love for the city. What do you envision as your legacy for Oakland, whether you win or lose?
Whether I win or lose, I want to see Oakland become the kind of city that I know Oakland was and can be again, which is developing, the population, the people, the future generations, without the drugs, without the prostitution. We revive our system of education. We see it be a thriving city where, if you want, just one person can go to work and the other can stay home and help raise the kids. And it means a city where no longer can people live in fear. We can't live in fear anymore. The crime is off the charts. The drugs is off the charts. The homelessness. Take something very simple. This is 2025, if I remember last, right? We can't pick up garbage. Look around the city. The garbage in the streets. And so I want to flip all that around. My legacy would be to leave Oakland as a great city, thriving, productive, healthy again, and with the next generation able to grow up and their children able to grow up so that we can continue that actual beautiful way that God created us in his image. And if I can leave that, win or lose, to Oakland, I'd be very happy.
Well, Mindy, thank you so much for joining us again here at the Brotherhood of Elders Network. This Real Talk About the Town series is just what you mentioned. It's an opportunity for our members and partners of ours in the community to hear what the plans are for folks that are vying for public office here. We love this city, and so we love anybody else that is also in love with it. We really appreciate you answering the call to have a conversation today. And should you win, of course, you should know that we would love to maintain the lines of communication. We're an intergenerational group of black men that will support this city no matter what. And so best of luck to you during the rest of the campaign. What do we have, about a month?
It's about a month. The ballots go out on March 17th.
Oh, that's coming up.
That's another thing, get rid of ranked choice voting. But March 17th, and the election day is April 15th, yeah.
Well, best of luck to you the
Thank
rest
you.
of the way. And thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This has been a great discussion. I love it.